Hello, everybody. My name is Ray McKenna. I've been in the fitness industry over 15 plus years, and I am an accredited sports nutritionist and performance nutritionist, and also I am a, a sports training consultant. I've got a background in strength and condition and behavior change. But there's many stuff that I can speak about, but the most important thing I want to speak about today is how I can add value and how I can actually simplify carbohydrates for you. But first off, I need to just check. Yeah, it's working. We're working. So what I'm gonna do is today is I'm gonna break down carbohydrate metabolism in the most simplest way possible that we can do. And also you will get benefits on understanding what metabolic rate is also, and which is like our metabolism and how it functions. And the reason why I wanted to speak on that is because when we hear the word carbohydrates, fats, proteins, alcohol, water, we keep thinking that it's this like static thing and that they just work in isolation. But metabolism works in like a dynamic way, meaning it's constantly like burning energy, it's constantly storing, it's constantly making changes, adaptations. And what happens is basically energy is used different depending on the individual. So that's what, so metabolic rate basically, as you can see, is the amount of energy required for the chemical process in living organisms to live. So basically, your resting metabolism is the number of calories burned at rest. So it's the number of energy that we use at rest. So basically, it's the number of calories that we need to live. Now, inside the damn calories, what's necessary is proteins from macronutrients, fats, carbohydrates, water, and obviously inside of them, we also need micronutrients. But we're going to speak today on this. So basically, if you look at metabolic rate, our body will expand energy through the resting metabolism, which I just spoke about here. Then you have the thermic effect of the food that you eat. For an example, when you eat protein, there's a thermic effect of about 30 to 40%. And what happens is the thermic effect of protein is like when you eat protein, it costs the body energy to use that protein, to store it, to break it down. But it doesn't mean that you go and eat an excessive amount of protein above probably a gram per pound of body weight, because it doesn't mean that you're going to burn more calories than that, because there's a certain threshold of the amount of protein that your body can use, and that excessive protein a lot of the time will convert and get used as a carbohydrate to the body. But again, that happens throughout 24 hours, throughout 48 hours consistently. And then you have another thing that has a thermic effect is dietary fiber. Some kind of carbohydrates would, but also, for example, we're staying on carbohydrates, but just let me give you an example. If you look into MCT fatty acids, which are medium chain triglycerides, you probably heard of MCT oil, you probably heard of coconut oil. And basically, these MCTs, I think by looking into the research on them, they have about a 5 to 10% thermic effect on them. But the thing is that they are metabolized and used by the liver straight away. So if you look into a lot of people that probably follow ketogenic diets, or you look into people that follow low carbohydrate diets that's educated around this, and you use MCT fatty acids, you can actually get fuel for training right away along with protein. So you probably heard of the term 10,000 steps, 15,000 steps, and people taking step counts. But here's what happens is non-exercise activity thermogenesis is basically the amount of energy that we do on a day-to-day basis from fidgeting, from walking around, moving our body. If you look at me, I'm probably moving right now. And what happens is when you are, say for example, full of energy, you are probably not dieting all the time. Unconsciously, a lot of people will start to get more active without knowing it. And what I mean by that is that, like, let's say, for example, you'll notice where people's habits start to change. They start to walk more without having to track like, or am I doing 10,000 steps? Does that make sense? Like they will start to like run upstairs a lot more. They will start to probably stand a lot more. They'll start to walk to different places without knowing. And they'll start to like be moving around and generating a lot of heat without even knowing unconsciously. I find that, and you see that in the research, a lot of people that like when they're in a fed state. For an example, James Betts is an incredible researcher from Bath University. You should look if you are a trainer yourself or you're somebody that's interested in looking at say intermittent fasting or stuff like that. He's done the breakfast project in Bath University in England. And if you look at like people that were fed a breakfast versus non-breakfast, do not think that this is just one study. They showed that there was a I think it was a 500 calorie increase in the control group that had a breakfast compared to non-breakfast. And I would say, and I think a lot of people would say by looking at that is that's from like sometimes when people probably eat, they don't realize the amount of activity that they will do unconsciously when they do eat. Then the other way that you expand energy is through exercise and the exercise that you do. But it doesn't mean that you go and do an excessive amount of exercise all the time and that's just going to burn more energy. Because remember, that comes down to the amount of energy that we take in to be able to meet the demands of that activity. So this is just the four components of how our body expands energy. And then the pyramid of nutrition priorities, which would be, I'd say 55 to 60%, the most important is the calories that you consume. Then you'd look into the macronutrients inside of them calories. Then you'd look into the micronutrients, which are important for the body. And then meal timing and frequency of the meals, how you schedule them out, are very, very important on top of that. But meal timing, frequency, and supplements are not really necessary until we understand, have we got the right amount of energy that a human being needs for the total daily energy expenditure? Have we got the right macronutrients specific to an individual? And have we got the specific amount of micronutrients for our health? This is all the research done on carbohydrate metabolism with energy expenditure. This is I got this from reading a research paper from Kevin Hall in 2017. He's looked into fats and carbohydrates. And as you can see, when energy expenditure is met, whether somebody goes on a low carbohydrate diet or a high fat diet, low carb, high fat, or a low fat, high carb, usually there's no really difference in like whether which macronutrients or or which macronutrient composition that they choose. And what I mean by that is that it's really like it's don't go away thinking calories in versus calories out, because that is not what I am saying here right now. But what you notice is when like whether you choose carbohydrates or fats specific after protein, like as long as that can you can set yourself up for adherence and consistency and satiety, like you're gonna gain weight, or things are gonna happen when you consistently overeat based on your energy expenditure on a day-to-day basis and on a week-to-week basis and monthly basis. Okay, so that's what's shown. And like based on the current research that I've been reading, this is just from a research perspective, it's actually shown that like above energy expenditure, that it's the excessive amount of fats when somebody eats that fat storage happens, because de novo lipogenesis, which is the conversion of carbohydrates to fat, like it doesn't really happen that much, and it can take basically probably about 24 to 48 hours for that even to occur. So like carbohydrates going to fat, like it doesn't really occur that much. So I'm going to go on to the next one and go into our main thing. So now we're going to get into carbs. I'm just going to simplify carbs for you today, guys. Okay. So basically, you hear a lot of diets promoting carbs as healthy, carbohydrates as bad. So the question is, are carbohydrates good or bad? The short answer is they're both can be good or they can be labeled bad. So first off, I do specialize in the gut microbiota. If somebody has inflammatory inflammatory bowel syndrome, if somebody has small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, if somebody does struggle with digestive issues, chances are that some carbohydrates could affect that individual differently. But what I would say, based on Trent Swellengroff's work, he was a PhD, I think he's in Canada, and he showed that, like, so basically in your mitochondria, you have basically an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase. And when they showed after a 24 to 48-hour period of people eating low carbohydrate diets, what happened was they lost the ability to use them enzymes. So that could be something that you could look into, like like enzymes affect how a person can metabolize and utilize carbohydrates. So basically, complex carbohydrates, which you probably heard many years ago, which are a lot of them are polysaccharides, would be complex carbs. So like their structure, and they have a lot of fiber inside of them. So the body has to like work harder to digest these. Like a lot of the fiber can be very beneficial. As you've seen, fiber has been shown consistently in research for the last 70 years for its benefits on controlling, or its benefits on healthy cholesterol levels, its benefits on systemic and long-term inflammation, its benefits on digestion. So these would come, complex carbohydrates are also going to like stabilize your blood glucose and your blood sugar to prevent you probably from getting them, like, do you ever get notice them, like, just for anybody, just to simplify it, do you ever notice where you'd eat something and then about 60 minutes later or 90 minutes later you get this big crash throughout the day? Like, if you did make more choices from like vegetables, whole grain foods, you made some more choices from things like sweet potatoes, quinoa, lentils, beans, fresh fruits, high fiber fruits, chances are that you will be able to stay fuller for longer. You get me? And if you look into, for example, say two apples, I'm just giving an example. Two apples has like what, 200 calories, 250 calories. It's also got fiber inside of it. And when you eat them foods, they're more satiating. They have a little bit more of a crunch. And chances are, over a day or over 2 days, 3 days, they're going to keep you more satiated. And the other thing is that, like, it's also going to keep you fuller for longer. Makes sense. And the other thing is, it's also very tasty. Simple carbohydrates, some people say, are a little bit worse. I don't really think that they are. That's why I have them here. That's what you would hear say. But the thing about simple carbohydrates is they're just a little bit more lower in dietary fiber, and they're probably just a little bit more digested and used a little bit more rapidly. So, for an example, you might look into eating, say, sugary foods like, say, jellies, say, desserts, and chances are that you become quick, you eat them, you probably get a rise in your blood glucose. Then all of a sudden, you get these dips, you get these energy dips right away. And chances are that, like, you will probably be somebody who is, when you get them energy dips, that you are not able to actually probably understand what's going on. And then all of a sudden, you start to want to eat more of that food, more of that food, and more of that food. And therefore, your chance of overeating is a little bit more increased. Somebody probably that's coming from a diabetes background probably struggle with like more simple carbohydrates because the rise in blood glucose and the drops. So, in terms of carbohydrates, I would highly suggest eating more complex carbohydrates to keep you fuller for a lot longer. Next slide is, I'm just going to give you a brief guide into carbohydrates. So, as you can see, carbohydrates are in so many different foods. You have lactase, which is in dairy products. Again, you drink cans of Coca-Cola, you drink different kinds of sodas and stuff like that. These would have carbohydrates that would probably raise your blood glucose really quick. They wouldn't have good micronutrient composition. Fruits and vegetables, as I've shown you, a lot of them are complex carbohydrates. Pastas, depending on which one that you kind of eat, some would have like more nutrient dense pastas that you can get available now. But there is nothing wrong with pasta in general that's made from flour either. For an example, if you look into a lot of endurance sports right now, a lot of them are using pasta for carbohydrates to be able to sustain the work throughout endurance runs because it's easily digested, it's easily absorbed in the intestine, so therefore it's going to help with gastric emptying when you're exercising at longer durations. I've used this a lot with people myself. And then you have what we'd call like sweets, jellies, all that kind of stuff. So basically what happens is carbohydrates are just broken down and turned into a thing called glucose and a simple sugar. And so basically it's the same whether you eat sweets, candy. If you went back to this and you looked into your energy expenditure over a day, you looked into, let's say you are somebody who is expanding 25 to 3,000 calories. I definitely do not think that by you making choices of like 2 to 300 calories of, say, jellies or something of your favorite foods throughout that day is going to make an effect on you whatsoever. But my recommendation is if you're going to eat these foods, why not eat them before or after a workout where basically they're going to just be stored straight into muscle glycogen after a workout anyhow. And if you did have them before the workout, probably an hour, 2 hours before, you're probably going to use them a lot more effectively inside of your workout. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that you don't really have to cut out many foods if they're not affecting you. I would really look into how the carbohydrates that you're eating on a day-to-day basis, because remember, glucose is used as energy for your brain. It's also used to maintain stable blood glucose levels. It's also stored as muscle glycogen, and it's also used as energy during exercise. And it's also used for aerobic metabolism in exercise, which people think that, oh, you just use fat during aerobic exercise. That's an absolute myth because you use carbohydrates also. And through glycolysis, which is the burning of carbohydrates, you also use carbohydrates through exercise. So we're going to go through the next thing called the glycemic index, which is the measure of how slowly a carb is digested and absorbed. So a lower glycemic index will result in a slower rise in blood glucose levels and lower insulin levels. So a lot of carbohydrates from complex carbohydrates would be have a low glycemic index. Like if you looked into say white potato, that has a high glycemic index, but depending on how you cook it, it's also got a high satiety index. Can you see that? Like if you look into potatoes when boiled, the satiety index and glycemic index of them changes. They actually become one of the most satiating foods. And that's why when you look into even, let's say for example, I've done a couple of fitness model competitions in my day, and I do study a lot of people that do physique sports. A lot of smart people will use potatoes boiled throughout physique sports. But not only are basically potatoes like if you look into potatoes, like not only are potatoes good for satiety, but look at the sorry the micronutrients in them. They've got potassium, they've got vitamin C, they've got vitamin A, they've got protein. That's only per 100 grams, and they've got like 148 grams has 110 calories. Whereas sweet potato, there's no really difference. The both of them are very, very nutrient dense and they're also very, very satiating. Because remember, if you can eat highly satiated foods, like even oatmeal is highly satiating, cheese is highly satiating, grapes are highly satiating, beef is one of the most satiating foods that you can eat. So the glycemic index is that's what happens is you ever notice when you get that rise in blood glucose and as I said to you already, then you get that huge dip that happens. Now, sometimes that can be okay if you're aware of what's going on. Like, for example, after a workout, you might have done a massive workout and you just want to be able to get carbohydrates right into you. Afterwards, this would be a great time to do that. So the glycemic index is just a measure of how carbohydrates are digested and absorbed. I done satiating. And then we have like hyperglycemia, which is the underlying, which is basically the amount of the loss of insulin producing cells from within the pancreas, or if the body develops resistance to insulin. So basically what happens is, do you ever notice when you eat foods and you eat certain foods, and what happens is you get that rise again in blood glucose. For somebody with stronger with diabetes, this can really affect them, where basically just depending on the rise of the blood glucose that happens right away. And I've shown you that in the glycemic index, because some carbohydrates rapidly rise blood glucose, and that can actually affect, especially somebody that comes from a background and has diabetes. This is what hyperglycemia is for anybody that doesn't know. I was meant to put that slide first. It's just basically when your blood it's basically when your blood levels, as you can see, are greater than 11 mmLs 2 hours after eating, or when your blood glucose levels are greater than 7 mLs even when fasting. Some of the symptoms that you probably notice from hyperglycemia is an increased urination, an increased thirst, an increased hunger. High blood sugar levels will be also associated with the following, like weakness, weight loss, blurred vision. And then we have what a lot of people say in carbohydrates with the terminology of gluten protein, which is a protein that's found in wheat, barley, and rye. A lot of people are sensitive to it or have an autoimmune disorder that could be related to ingesting it, which is called celiac disease. Based on the research that I've looked into and studying it, I've never really seen much on celiac disease. So my recommendation, unless you have been diagnosed with that and it's a medical issue, just look into kind of like the foods that you're eating that's causing that, like which ones are actually, like you could eat stuff like fermented breads, you could eat fermented foods, you could look into the fiber content of some of the breads that you're eating, what you're actually having with them breads, what you're actually having with them cereals can make a massive difference on it. So unless you've been diagnosed being gluten sensitive, I'd really just look into that for yourself. I just wanted to give you some what foods are actually lower in carbohydrates for anybody out there that wanted to look into it. Like dark chocolates, 70% is okay, 85% has a much more lower carbohydrate content. Cocoa nibs, these are all great. Remember, dark chocolate also has other great benefits. Fruits like avocado, blackberries, olives, raspberries. Raspberries, I think, have about 7 grams of fiber, or probably more per 7 grams per 100 calories, or per 100 grams. Sorry, I think 150 grams of raspberries has about 57 to 60 calories. Again, looking into breads, you could use things with almond flours. You could use different kind of breads. I have a lot of clients that make their own breads. Because remember, like fermented bread can also be very beneficial for your gut microbiota. You could look into different kind of desserts, berries and creams. You could look into certain oils are very low in carbohydrates, which we know, which are very good for ketogenic diets that want to keep their carbohydrates a little bit low. Broccoli, cauliflower, mushrooms, cauliflower rice on low carbohydrate diets, spinaches. Now I wanted to get into vitamins, because the reason why we're going to get into vitamins, because when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, you also get, like, I just have to move my legs, you also get like a lot of vitamins and minerals inside of them, which are micronutrients. So basically, like, they have a massive input on the roles that they play inside of the body. And that's why I find that, like, when you get nutrient dense carbohydrates and foods in general, a lot of them will contain a lot of vitamins. Now you can get them. You don't have to eat carbohydrates to get all of these either. You can get them out of other foods too, but I'm just showing you the benefits of carbohydrates today in other ways. So think about it. Vitamin A, which is known as retinol, as you can see, I don't have to read that out, is inside the carrots, green leafy vegetables, sweet potatoes, as I've shown you. And again, one of the most important things that's important for is vision, but vitamin A is also important for the absorption of certain fats. B vitamins, which are one of the most important vitamins for energy metabolism, and they are in, of course, animal products, dairy products. They are also in a lot of foods that are fortified with B vitamins. They are also in things like nutritional yeast contains a lot of vitamin B12. Then you have part two, understanding that like vitamin C, which a lot of you all know, also known for as ascorbic acid. The sources include citrus fruits, berries, tomatoes, which vitamin C is important for growth and the maintenance of all of our body tissues. It's also very important for the absorption of collagen. If any of you haven't heard about collagen, which is very important for connective tissue, and vitamin D, which is important for maintaining strong bones and teeth. It's very, very important. Sources include fish, egg yolks, cheese. I would make a recommendation that like looking into supplementing with vitamin D if you can. The last recommendations I looked, I think was in Graham Close's paper, was 2,000 IUs a day, but vitamin D supplementation is very, very specific. And I do believe that it's very based on testing. If you got a test done to know exactly that, but I don't want to make a recommendation on it. I do take 2,000 IUs just for myself to be sure that I'm getting a vitamin D in. And then the other vitamins that you would have, which are also important for immune system function, repair and cellular damage, is vitamin E, which you get a lot in almonds, peanuts, certain oils, which is also important for your immune system. And vitamin K. A lot of vitamin K comes, you get it in a lot of greens. It's also very, very healthy for your gut microbiota. Vitamin K comes in like spinaches, kales, collard greens, as you can see. And for an example, like if you look into a couple of like carbohydrates that you can eat from fruits, I wanted to give you a little bit of a benefit from it today. When I was living in so many hot countries, like I've lived and traveled myself, and I just realized that like I never realized the benefits of watermelon. Like when you actually travel and you looked into it, and that's where I got this created. Not only is watermelon amazing for your skin, hair, and digestion, but one of the key things that I looked into is the lycopene and vitamin C in it, which is brilliant. And it's also very, very important for like sunburn. It can actually help with. That's what I was looking into it for. Like choosing watermelon, like watermelon is one of the most nutrient dense foods that you can eat. It's also very, very beneficial for hydration. I remember I spoke about the vitamin B's. It also has vitamin B6 inside of it. And it also citrulline, which if you look into most pre-workouts now, it contains citrulline, which is very good for pre-workout. And it also maybe help with muscle soreness. But if you look at how rich watermelon is in nutrient densities and vitamins and minerals, and the other thing about watermelon is it's so calorie, like it's so much food volume, which means that like if you looked into even a thousand grams, is it, of watermelon, which is a kilogram, like the calorie content of a kilo of watermelon is about 300 calories, is it? 350 calories. And like a lot of it is metabolized and used by the liver, and you'd be using it right away. Kidney beans. Kidney beans, especially for anybody out there that's a vegan, vegetarian, but even if you're not, they have really, really massive amount of micronutrients inside of them. They have antioxidants, which help fight off inflammation, fight off free radicals. They've also been shown to massively in scientific evidence to lower LDL cholesterol and decrease inflammation markers, which has been shown massively to increase heart disease. They contain flavonols which are antioxidants. And the thing about kidney beans are, remember we spoke about that glycemic index earlier on? They eating a lot of kidney beans or beans in general will help stabilize your blood glucose throughout a day. Also, I do know that steeping beans or something and cleaning them overnight is very, very important to remove anti-nutrients out of them. But if you like kidney beans, you like chili, making a chili and load it up with these would be very, very beneficial for you. Oatmeal. Thing about oatmeal are, I think oatmeal, and science as well thinks of them, that are some of the most healthiest grain on earth. They are also gluten free by naturally. They do contain a lot of fiber. Now, the thing is that if you look into the oats, they contain a certain fiber, which is a prebiotic called beta glucan. And I think oatmeal are the only ones that contain this. Beta glucan is very, very healthy for promoting healthy gut bacteria and increasing your feelings of fullness. The other thing about oats are they're very, very filling. They're very satiating, and they're also very, very easy to prepare and easy to digest and absorb. You can stay looking at that for a minute. We went through the white potato and sweet potato. There's no really difference. A lot of people ask that question. It's just that they have different nutrients. I think sweet potato also has a higher vitamin A and it has a higher content of fiber than white potato. But I suggest the best one you can eat is the one that you like the most. Brown rice versus white rice. I think brown rice just is has a little bit more nutrition than rice, but again, I'd really come down to the one that you can eat the most. Like brown rice has a little bit more higher magnesium content. Magnesium again is another micronutrient which is very beneficial for you. But I wouldn't look into thinking that because white rice is processed that it's bad for you. It's goes very, very beneficial for you. I do believe looking into also white rice for sleep has been shown massively for sleep. The benefits of it to help you sleep is, as you can see, it's a little bit more easier to digest. Brown rice can be a little bit more difficult to digest, but again, depending on how healthy your digestive system is and your gut microbiota, you shouldn't struggle with a problem with that. Going up to milk. So milk also has carbohydrates in it called lactase. And I drink raw milk myself, but I come from Ireland, which we have unbelievable dairy in Ireland. So I don't know where you come from, but we're doing quite well on that end. And I've looked into Spain, where I live now. Spain is quite good too. Thing about dairy is when people say to me dairy is bad, I always say like which part of it is bad? So is it the protein that's bad? Is it because like when you look into the research on protein from dairy, even the latest research done on 100 grams of protein that stimulated amino acids 7 to 10 grams an hour over a 10-hour period, I never seen any inflammation in that or any dangers in that. And they use the whey protein and casein protein inside of milk, which you get, which is also the bioavailability and digestibility of it and absorption is 95 to 100%. So I don't know where dairy is bad from a protein sort or the potassium in it, because I also thought potassium is important for not just muscle contraction but also maintaining a healthy blood pressure. Riboflavin, which is a B vitamin, helps properly develop cells in your body. Remember when we showed you that at the start, the B vitamins and the benefits of them. Phosphorus, which phosphorus is very important for bone health also. Vitamin B12, remember we spoke about that earlier on. Vitamin B12, which helps with nerves and keeps your blood cells healthy. Zinc, which is very important for the immune system. Unbelievably important for the immune system. Zinc is, I think that's one of its biggest responsibilities as a micronutrient. And then you have calcium, which is very, very vital for your bone strength. And about, like, I'm not just saying it by looking at that, but I know the absorption rate of calcium from dairy is really, really high. And the thing is, there's a difference between calcium intake and calcium absorption. So that's what you would want to look into. I do know that, I'm not saying that vegetables are bad, but the absorption rate of from vegetables of calcium is a little bit more different. But you can get calcium also from sardines, figs, orange juice, many different foods. Now, I just wanted to show, so for any of us that don't know, I did write my thesis on the gut microbiota and its relationship with exercise. And throughout the last programs I've done, I've studied a lot of the gut microbiota and its relationship with the body and the brain and the health. I think I have a little, do I have a little thing here? No, I haven't got it today, but I'm going to go through prebiotics. So prebiotics foods are high in special types of fiber that support your digestive health, and they increase friendly bacteria in the gut, which helps with various digestive problems and even your immune system. Remember, your gut microbiota, folks, regulates and controls your immune system, okay? So your gut microbiota also has a relationship with your brain, all right? The second brain, the vagal nerve, which is a connection to your brain. And also, about 95% of serotonin is made in your gut microbiota. So just thinking about that too. I always say healthy gut, healthy hormones, but that's quite generic. Like, but I do believe in a healthy gut, and that's why, like, if you look into vegetable sources for prebiotics, you ever notice where's that one? Chicory inside a licorice, which also has a lot of inulin. Inulin is is another like healthy source for the gut microbiota. Even onions, if you can, if you can like if onions don't affect you in any way, onions are a great prebiotic source, and they've got a great form of prebiotics which is healthy for the gut microbiota. And as I shown you at the start, if you are not gluten intolerant, if you don't struggle with that whatsoever, and you will be fine having some wheat, because wheat is also great prebiotic and healthy for digestion, especially the ones high in fiber. Legumes, if you can handle them as well. Again, I think steeping legumes is very beneficial and can be okay for you. As we looked into it, lentils, chickpeas, white beans. I do live in Spain at the moment, and the Spanish culture, which long serving, long lasting people, eat a lot of like chickpeas, white beans, beans in general are highly part of the Mediterranean diet over here. That's just, I was living in Australia before. A lot of them eat chickpeas as well. I eat them in general myself. I think they're very, very healthy and beneficial for you. And then you have fruit sources, berries and bananas, which also have great prebiotics, which is healthy for your gut microbiota. Now you're probably saying, look, and Ray, where will I start? I'd reckon just you don't have to go all in on this, but if you could just start consciously eating more of these foods over time and becoming your own coach, like meaning like see how you feel after them, see how your digestion happens. But just remember, when you reintroduce foods, if you haven't been eating them before, you might get some symptoms from them. You might sense some bloating, you might sense some indigestion, but just give it a bit of a chance. Just give it a bit of a chance. That's only if you haven't got a disease or anything like that, because I can't make them recommendations. But just give it a chance, because a lot of the time, like, you could be struggling with digestive issues and cutting things out of your diet all the time, you know? You could be doing fasted high intensity interval training that's been shown to increase gut permeability. So it could be a host of different stuff, but don't just blame it on the food right away. And just before we do go on to the next one, I'd always recommend that you go with a food first approach before thinking supplementations or thinking different stuff or taking probiotics or anything like that. Because like you can get a lot of like probiotics which are living organisms that's found in natural food already, which is known as good and friendly bacteria. So basically, do you ever hear of kefir? Kefir? I'd highly suggest getting raw kefir if you can, and raw yogurts and raw dairy as much as possible, and aged cheeses as I have written in here, because like a lot of these like tempeh, misos, tamaris, like these can be very very good if you actually get like a good brand of them and look into the brand that you're possibly buying. Sauerkraut as well, kimchi, olives, pickles, kombucha, and again, grain sources. Remember I was telling you earlier on, like there's a lot of sourdough and traditionally well-made breads which are fermented and have a lot of probiotics in them. So looking into like the breads that you're eating and stuff like that. And again, don't just go all in. Just try. Let's say you've cut out dairy for a while, okay? And don't go and just throw loads of different dairy back in. Just try reintroduce it, and if you feel any symptoms from it, just give it a bit of a chance. And then like probably 10 to 14 days, because remember, wait, sorry, I'm going off topic. Just and then if you're still feeling symptoms from it, you might be lactose intolerant. You might be struggling with that. But then the other thing is that, like, remember, your gut microbiota, guys, is always adapting and changing with environment. So it's not static, it's constantly changing all the time. And you can actually train your gut microbiota. Remember that. You can ask me more questions on that if you want, because we're going to stay on topic. Again, as I was saying to you earlier on about like different food choices that you can have, if you look into carrots, carrots are high in beta carotene, which is it's an antioxidant. It's also got a lot of B vitamins. Remember we spoke about B vitamins earlier and the benefits that they have on energy metabolism. I tell you, you could have like carrots. Roasted carrots are amazing. You could roast your carrots. You could chop them up and shred them in a salad. They're beautiful. They're very very crunchy. You could eat them just raw, nice and cleaned. But there is nothing wrong with carrots. They look at what they have in them. They're also rich in potassium, which helps with hydration. See a lot of people taking all these electrolyte drinks and all that, but I always say you can get electrolytes, potassiums, minerals from the food that you eat consistently on a day-to-day basis and a week-to-week basis, and your diet can give you most of this stuff if you have I don't like using the word balanced diet, but you eat a diet that contains proteins, carbohydrates, fats, prebiotics, probiotics. Broccoli. As you know, broccoli is a great source of dietary fiber. It's also got magnesium, but calcium, the absorption rate of calcium and iron. It also contains iron, but it contains non-heme iron, which non-heme iron is not absorbed as good as heme iron in animal-based products. That's all. But it doesn't mean, again, broccoli has other benefits, as you can see inside of this. Sulforaphane is one of the most important things inside of broccoli, which is a compound found in broccoli that's, I think it's been shown to slow aging process and stuff like that. But like again, you're not going to just eat broccoli on its own and you're going to slow your aging process. There's many things that can contribute to that. Skeletal muscle is very, very good for longevity, building muscle. The mitochondria biogenesis, a better, more functional mitochondria, is very beneficial for like longevity, fitness, health levels. But when you eat a combination of these foods and you eat a combination of good dietary fibers like this, these are going to contribute to that. Like broccoli can support a healthy gut bacteria. And the last one is pineapple. Just going to go with one fruit because is this. So the thing about pineapple so first off, it has antioxidants in it. But the one thing I would look into this is pineapple has, see this down the bottom called bromelain in pineapples, and that has been shown to reduce swelling, inflammation, pain. But again, I don't think it's going to do that in isolation, but it's going to contribute to that with all of the other stuff that we spoke about throughout this presentation. It's also like the thing about pineapple as well is that it's very tasty. That's number one. As you see in a lot of Asian foods, they use it with fried rices. They use it in rices. It's very, very good in cottage cheese. I get a lot of people to eat it with. It's very, very good as a snack to eat when you're going out. It's quite readily available in shops and all right now. But I do believe cutting it up yourself and eating it is very beneficial. Again, sugar gets this bad name, but I was just looking at the different types of sugar, and it's like sugar is added sugar is in more of about 75%. I was looking on average in different foods, salt. But again, when people say sugar, at the end of the day, there's so many different combinations of sugar that we're using, and like a lot of sugar gets used the same as each other in metabolism. So you got to really, really be careful of how you pronounce that and what one that you use. Because going back to the start of the whole thing is that remember the glycemic index, like certain sugars will probably raise you to a higher glycemic index, which can also be very, very beneficial for you. Because remember, it's going to get turned into glucose and a simple sugar. But again, if you're expanding a lot of energy on a day to day basis through your exercise, your non exercise, the thermic effect of the feeding that you're eating, chances are that you will be able to eat some of your foods in moderation and be able to set yourself up for, I wouldn't say sustainable, but you get where I'm coming from, like being able to incorporate the foods that you like in moderation as long as you haven't got a disease or they're not affecting you, and while also probably having, say, a certain amount of protein, carbohydrates, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, combination of saturated fats, MCT fats, consistent exercise, and being able to incorporate some of your favorite foods from the foods that you like daily. I hope you like this presentation. It probably went on for long. Let me know if I can ever help you in any way, and I'd love to speak to you. My name is Ray, and sorry, and I'd love to answer any of your questions if possible. This did went on for a long time, 45 minutes. But the key takeaways is from a carbohydrate standpoint. First off, if you ever want any research on carbs in general, I'll happily share that with you. If you ever want any research on the gut microbiota, I'd happily share that with you too, so you can look into it for yourself and you can make your own decision, which is make you more confident and more competent in what you're doing. You might be one of them people. But what I would suggest is find carbohydrates and the nutrition that works for you, that's specific to you, to your culture, to your probably family, to what you do on the weekends, what you do with your social life, and just look into how they affect you. And just before you do that and choose diet, remember, nutrition's just the fuel for us to exercise. You get me? So just think of that people think all this, calories that, calories for bulking, calories for not bulking, calories for them that. Like, you have to create a training stimulus. Like, you have to be able to, like, when you go in and you do your weight training or you do your cardiovascular work or you're doing whatever you're doing, like, for your sport, just make sure that you're actually making progress with that. And the nutrition then should support the training that you're doing. So always just look into that. Have you got that nailed down first? Consistency with that. Because the reason why I'm saying that is, like, the gut microbiota can be trained. It's adaptable, it's trainable, and it can, like, you can teach it how to, like, oxidize and use carbohydrates and use certain foods also to support exercise. So just remember that, and that's something to take into consideration. Thanks a lot for following me video and watching. I really hope you have a great time. Any questions you ever have, feel